This is Mara and Ben for Stellar Strategy Gaming. Today we're talking about how to run a campaign in the Abyss. If you're not familiar on the Great Wheel cosmology of D&D, the Abyss is the plane of chaotic evil. I'd like to take just a moment to break down what that actually means. When you are out in nature in our world, one of the things that's very important to understand, one of the things you have to educate people to before they get into like serious camping or boating or anything else that involves being out in the elements, is that nature doesn't really care about you. So if there's water that's potable for you to drink, that's great, you're fine. If there's not, it's not nature's responsibility to help you. So with the Abyss, it's a little different. In the Abyss, nature absolutely does care about you, and it absolutely wants to kill you. It's a plane of chaotic evil, so it's an evil plane, so it wants to hurt you. This is different from the Nine Hells, which is also a plane of evil, but the Nine Hells is a plane of lawful evil. So it's possible to live in the Nine Hells if you can work out the rules. Not saying I want to build a summer home there, but it can be done. Whereas with the Abyss, a plant that gave you food one day will poison you the next.
Yes, and one of the important things to understand is when we mean that it's always trying to kill you, is that you are literally rolling checks every turn that you were present there. Now, don't get this confused. You're not rolling just vague checks. This is the Demon Lord's lair effects specifically regarding your mental fortitude. For example, I believe that one of Grazit's lair effects would be something along the lines of you basically just become the Horny Bard. And so you might have to roll a d20 every round and get higher than a certain number based on how many layers away from him you are. And so if you're at the higher levels, you're not actually going to be making all that difficult to check unless you are physically on one of the higher level planes that has a Demon Lord on it. But understand that no matter where you are, you will still be making these checks. The DC is just going to change based on where you're located, so depending on where you are, you could have a DC 2 to resist madness, or you could have a DC 35 to resist madness.
Something that's, speaking of where you are, something that's important to remember about the Abyss, there are hundreds of discovered layers of the Abyss, but there are many more undiscovered layers, and the Abyss, it's theorized, could be infinite. So if you're going to be traveling to the Abyss, you have to be very specific about what layer you want to go to. Each layer is functionally its own world. So you could have a world that is a massive jungle full of carnivorous plants and carnivorous animals whose favorite food is you. Or you could have a polluted ocean full of demonic sea creatures and carnivorous algae and seaweed whose favorite food is also you. There's kind of a common theme there, but what you need in order to survive on any given layer is going to vary depending on the terrain you're in and what Demon Lord you're closest to.
Yes, and it's also really good to note that Demon Lords aren't the only thing you're going to find here, though you are certainly going to find a lot of Demon Lords. What you're also going to find is, due to the fact that there are hundreds of mini-worlds within this plane, this makes it a very good place for aberrations to come and reside, especially because a lot of aberrations are almost interstellar refugees from the far realm, which is weird to think about a mind flayer in that kind of context, but it is true. They don't really like being here. So if the planes of the Abyss are infinite, or the subplanes, I guess, that means that there's probably going to be a subplane which actually does mimic the far realm environment, at least enough for these guys to like it. So don't think that, oh, well, I have fire resistance, so I'm going to be fine against all the Demon Lords, because you might be coming up against a lot of psychic damage from the various aberrations you're coming up against.
So there's a simple question: is why would you want to campaign in this horror show? One way would be that if you want to do a kill your party campaign, something like your own take on Tomb of Annihilation, it'd be a good way to do it. You could certainly, in the Abyss rules as written, lore as written, you could definitely set up a campaign where it's just write 5 characters and we're going to kill them all over the course of an hour. Also, though, in the lore, if you kill a demon on the prime material plane, it will reform in the Abyss. Now, it is banished for a time, but it can eventually come back. And to be clear, if you kill a demon in the prime material, it will absolutely want to come back and kill you. In the lore, Dritsto Erdin kills a Balor named Urtu, and Urtu, as he's dying, actually says 100 years, not long for the likes of us, Drow, because the Drow live for like 700 years, meaning Urtu will be able to come back within Dritst's lifetime to take revenge. Also, if you're lucky enough to be a human, the demon can still come back and go after your kids, your grandkids, anything you care about. The only way to fully kill a demon is to kill it in its native plane of existence. So if you have killed a demon on the prime material and are worried about it coming back after you or your descendants, you absolutely have a reason to go after it in the Abyss. And also, the Abyss would be a good place for a Lich to hide a phylactery. The Abyss would be a good place to hide any evil or forbidden magical item.
Yes, and now, one of the other issues is that as you're venturing down into the Abyss, trying to kill demons or whatever it is, the Abyss is sort of styled like Tartarus from Greek mythology, in that, and as we mentioned earlier, it wants to kill you, and we don't mean that it's innately hostile to you. There is an intelligence behind the Abyss which is actively hostile towards you, and will throw things in your path just to make it hard. And one of the unique features of this is that the way how the Abyss works is it's sort of a funnel. It keeps going down and down and down, and every level that you go down, it becomes harder to go back up. And while that sounds just like a normal principle of gravity on some level, it's much more exacerbated in the Abyss. And on top of that, it also means that your Dimension Door spell, or whatever you're planning to use, isn't going to cut it when you're on level 30 of the Abyss, because it's got you in its grasp. You need very high-level spells, even to the point of needing perhaps a wish spell when you reach a certain depth of the Abyss just to get out.
And you have to keep in mind that you will be farther from certain sources of magic. So, for example, if you're playing a cleric of one of the goodly gods, let's say, Ogma, you will be farther from your god than you normally are, and your powers will be diminished. That will also be true of certain patrons. It can work the other way as well. If you're a warlock of like Ooze or of a fiend patron, you might actually be closer and more powerful, but you do need to be aware of it. So, to campaign in the Abyss, you need to reach a really high level. You need to probably have something on the order of a wish spell ready. You need to be sure that you have ways to connect back to your sources of power if you are powered in such a way that would be affected. And yeah, then you're pretty much ready to figure out all the magical resistances you need to absolutely everything and go kill a Balrog and have fun with that.
Yes, my final thought on the matter, just before we wrap up, is also that if you're playing Wild Magic Sorcerer, first, we don't recommend it ever, but also second, your magic will absolutely go haywire on this plane, because while the Chaos Sorcerers and Wild Magic Sorcerers draw magic from within, it is directly affected by what is around you, and so being on a chaotic, evil plane, you're not going to get good results nearly as often. But with that, we do hope that you liked this video. If you did, please leave a like, comment, subscribe even, and next week we'll be talking about how to run a level 20 campaign.